Are we in business? Oh, shit.
Hectic.
Do you do an intro?
Yeah.
Sick.
EG.
I'm Jade.
Welcome back, everybody, to the 7th episode of the Warm Up Podcast. I have a good friend joining me today. We've known each other for many years.
Many years.
Like almost coming up 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Crypto whiz kid. Host of
Allegedly.
the Wire pod. Is that right?
Wire Talks.
Wire Talks.
I mean, it's now defunct, but that you can find it on any good podcasting platform.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wire Talks, hosted by myself and my main man, Tommy Scaria. So if you're interested in some more technical discussions about cryptocurrency and also some bullshitting, I would encourage you to go check it out because we talk to a lot of the early DeFi entrepreneurs. So before that was really a named thing in a space. So it's an interesting look at the early days, I guess, in hindsight.
God damn. So that's a little sneak peek into Louis' knowledge of the whole situation. If you don't know, I don't know anything about anything to do with anything. But I want to learn about cryptocurrency.
Okay.
From you today, and also non-fungies.
Yep, non-fungies.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
all
stuff
the rage.
like that, dude. Yeah, because it's hot right now.
It is very hot. It is
It's
very
hot right now, and everyone's talking about it. And I want to know
Indeed.
what.
I was very not very surprised that you asked me about NFTs specifically.
Why?
But what's
Dude, I just heard it on like a different thing.
Yeah. Well, I think the news around that kind of collage artwork sold for like $70 million or something.
What the hell?
Which, I mean, I wouldn't have paid that much for it. I'd, rather buy a Rembrandt or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's
Let's go from the beginning. Like, how did you get into the world of cryptocurrency? Because you feel like you were just like an early adopter. Like, what the hell? You knew about it before anybody even heard about it.
I think I was always been interested in technology in general.
Yeah.
And financial markets, and also, understanding the money system that we use today, the fiat money system, all of that kind of stuff. And I first heard about Bitcoin being used in a practical sense I was in my first year of uni, so it would have been 2012.
Yeah.
And someone was talking to me about how they had bought drugs off the Silk Road.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was intrigued as to how that could work, the payment aspect, right? Because that, generally speaking, you can't use, PayPal to do illegal stuff. You can't integrate PayPal into your drug market.
Yeah.
And so, I sort of looked at it then, not as an investment or as a monetary asset or digital gold or anything like that, but as like a transactional technology. And I think, there was a bubble in late 2013 where the price went from $100 to $1,200 US in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And that caught my attention. I was first interested in trading it as a short, like to bet against it.
Oh, really?
Not because I had a long-term negative view about it, but just because it had gone up so much in such a short period of time that it looked like it was going to crater, and it did. And then it got to sort of 2015, and I'd just started trading it more. And there was this old TeamSpeak server called Whale Club, and it was basically a bunch of Bitcoin OGs that would go on there and just talk about trading. And, when I first went on there, there'd probably be maybe 20 or 30 people on. And some of them, nowadays would be worth 9 figures.
Did.
Very wealthy. And that was sort of my first delving into the community. You know, it was like its own little weird niche community. But there are a bunch of guys on there that I subsequently met when I moved to America in 2018. And like, I had sort of spoken to, we didn't really know each other, but I'd spoken to them over this TeamSpeak server like 4 years earlier, 3 years earlier. And that was kind of where I became really bullish on the technology paradigm in general, but also Bitcoin as the solution to, you know, all of the nonsense that goes on within our fiat money system. You know, just this endless printing of money and injecting of liquidity in the financial system to pump up asset prices and do all these things that it's like the lazy solution to all our economic problems, right? Is printing money.
What is the fiat system? Tell me dude, I don't know anything.
The fiat system is pretty straightforward. It's basically, there's nothing backing our money. And the thing that, you know, money used to be redeemable for gold.
Yeah.
Right? So there would be like a fixed amount of gold that you would get if you took your money into a bank. You could basically get the value of that money in gold at like a fixed rate. And then it became like slowly watered down over time. The problem with having money backed by gold is you can't create more of it without getting more gold, right? And so when you're doing things like fighting expensive wars, it becomes really difficult to maintain that backing because you want to create money to spend money that you don't have, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a way of financing
it's such
debt.
A weird,
right? And so in the 70s when the US was in Vietnam, which was a very expensive war.
Yeah.
They basically had to fully close the redeemability of money for gold, so they could just print more money to finance deficits, right?
Yeah.
Which is exactly what is happening now. So basically, the need for governments to borrow lots of money, you know, that is really what drove the shift away from gold-backed money to money backed by nothing. And so now money is issued into the, you know, real world through banks lending it out, right? So when you like go and say, I want to buy this house, I want a home loan, they're like, all right, you know, we're going to lend you $1.5 million. They just create that money out of nowhere, right? So there's no like savings deposit that's come in to like finance that.
Yeah.
Like the reserve, that's what they call it, fractional reserve banking. You basically get $1 in, but then you lend it out 5 times, right? And so commercial banks like, you know,
it's a great way to explain it.
CBA or Wells Fargo in America or Barclays or whatever, they're the people who actually create money, right? Through issuing loans to people.
Yeah.
But then the central banks, they encourage the lending of money by basically putting more cash on the bank's balance sheet. So they're like, the central bank, like the RBA or the Federal Reserve, basically says to CBA or, you know, whatever commercial bank, here's $100 billion, do something with it, right? And then the bank goes and tries to lend it out, right? So interest rates come down, it makes money cheaper, people are encouraged to borrow it, asset prices go up. So that's kind of how the fiat system works. It's created through lending. So every dollar that's issued has the interest rate attached to it, basically.
Yeah.
And, you know, through creating lots of money, it becomes more available. From banks injecting, they call it liquidity when the central bank injects liquidity into commercial banks, they're basically saying, go nuts, lend it out to everyone. They think that gets the economy going, right? So it's like a lazy solution to our economic problems is to encourage more lending and borrowing. More money in the system sloshing around, generally speaking, means more economic activity, sort of, sometimes, right? It's a flawed approach, but that's the easiest way. It's easier than like raising taxes and spending lots of money on infrastructure or whatever, which
yeah.
also gets the economy going. It's like the easy solution. So that's the fiat system. It's like basically creating money out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
But that in and of itself creates problems because you're effectively devaluing money
Yeah.
by creating more of it,
Yeah.
right? You could go way back in history to, Roman emperors and shit that basically would slowly water down money. Like the coins used to have copper in them, and then it becomes like 50% copper and 50% some worthless material.
Yeah.
And then it becomes 10% copper, blah, blah, blah. And they just create more and more money this way.
Yeah.
And in the end, you just end up with high inflation, right? Happened in Germany after World War One, happened in Venezuela, over the last decade, Zimbabwe, and to a lesser extent in like a dozen other countries, like Argentina. All these places have really high inflation. And in the, modern world, people say countries like the US have low inflation because the price of a can of Coke and, groceries aren't going up, right?
Yeah.
But the inflation that occurs because of all this money printing is in asset prices. So, home values in Australia is an obvious one. The stock market is another obvious one where basically, technology has solved the consumer goods inflation thing. It's where our technology now is so efficient that we can produce, electronics and food and cars and everything much more cheaply now than we could 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so the prices naturally come down or at least don't increase, right? And then you got people like Bezos that come in and say, we're going to run a massive e-commerce retailing company, but we're going to make as little profit as possible, basically. And so that kind of puts a depression on prices as well. But asset prices, have been going up consistently for a long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have little dips in crises, and then they just create a shitload of money and try and save the market, right? Which is what they did in March last year, or in the financial crisis in 2008. That's kind of the current system is pump everything up by printing money. Then people think that they're wealthier, they borrow more. Like if you buy a house and it goes up in value by 500 grand, they call it the wealth effect, right?
Yeah.
It's I think I'm worth more money, so I'm going to spend more money, I'm going to borrow more against these assets that I have, etc. So that's how they try and pump things up, basically. What that means for cryptocurrency is everyone knows that governments are going nuts creating money, right?
Yeah.
And this is an obvious hedge against all of the inflation that's going to occur as a result of this money creation, right? Because, the stat is something like 40% of all the money that was ever created was created last year.
What?
Right? So last year they were basically the world's fucked.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's broke. Tax revenue from the government's going to fall dramatically. What do we do? Let's just create, $500 billion, $1 trillion, and try and pump that through the financial system to reboot things, basically. And so that's what they did. And also it means that, I don't want to get too into the technical aspect of how this money creation works, but the central banks basically finance the government, right, by buying the government's debt. So the central bank creates new money by buying debt in the form of bonds, right? So governments issue bonds, and that's how they raise finances. And the central bank just goes and buys those bonds with money that they created out of nowhere, right? So they just print $1 trillion, then buy lots of government debt, and that gives the government the ability to issue more debt, basically.
Jesus Christ, basically.
Yeah.
You lost me at bond, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a bond is just a loan that you can trade.
Yeah.
Right? It's you have a mortgage. What if I could buy your mortgage, as in the right for you to pay me interest, What if I could buy that off the bank? So like, say CBA offers you a loan.
That's a good way to explain
I can like buy that loan, right?
Yeah.
And that's what like how the whole financial crisis happened. They took all these home loans and then they put them into different securities, and it made the risks of those home loans much more opaque. Yeah. And then that caused problems down the track, right? So this most debt is tradable, right? Everyone trades everyone else's obligations between each other all the time. And so the central bank basically creates new money and just buys lots of bonds.
Yeah.
And then that gives the government the ability to spend lots more money, right? So right now the US government deficit is like $3.5 trillion a year. So that means that the US debt goes up by $3.5 trillion per year, right? Which is massive.
Yeah.
And I would say that probably the biggest buyer of that debt is the US central bank. Right?
Are you saying from Australia? Or
No,
is this
no.
America?
In America.
Okay.
We have a similar situation.
Yeah.
But America's like
I thought you just fucking explained to me that America owns Australia somehow through this crazy banking
No. I mean...
All right, cool.
Yeah, it's more like it's just like the central bank in America and Australia just create new money.
Yeah.
And they buy government debt so the government can keep just torching all this money, right?
Yeah.
And so, what used to be kind of like, there's been these people for decades, they call them gold bugs, who are basically really cynical about the fiat money system. And they're like, well, I'm going to own gold. So if money gets inflated and devalued, my value of my gold will just go up in dollar terms, right?
Yeah.
So that's like a way of protecting their wealth. It's actually a really bad way of protecting your wealth. You're better off owning stocks or, income generating assets.
Yeah.
But put that to one side. The gold bug thing was generally for like, slightly conspiratorial, libertarian kind of people who like, they don't trust banks. They're going to bury their wealth in gold in like their backyard. So when the federal government comes to like steal their guns or whatever, that, there's sort of that sort of thing, right? And then, in the financial crisis and also because of COVID, it's become really clear that actually those people were making a lot of sense and they've been proven right in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And that is why like the crypto thing has got a lot of attention in the last 2 years from a tier or a class of investors that previously we thought it would be a decade before they start buying this stuff, right? Like, there's lots of like different categories of investors. There's like the average punter, mom and dad, they call them retail investors.
Yeah.
Then there's like family offices, which is like really wealthy people basically have like their own little investment company that like manages their wealth. Then you got hedge funds that basically do whatever they want. And then above that, you've got like pension funds, which is like a super fund, right? That everyone is invested in some way. And these are massive funds with tens or hundreds of billions of dollars under management. And insurance companies as well have big investments. And crypto went from like a few hedge funds dabbling in it to like the world's biggest pension funds and insurance companies and these people buying it in like a few months, right?
Wow, dude.
And so we thought that would take years and years.
Yeah.
But because all this money creation happened and there was like a renewed cynicism about the fiat system, this was like an obvious solution to that problem.
Wow, dude.
And what it means is that, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have gone up in value by, 5-10x in the last 12 months. And gold hasn't really done anything, right? All of that attention has gone into Bitcoin, right? And it's essentially stealing what used to be gold's role in the financial system as like a way of protecting your wealth. The thing about gold is like if you're invested in a company, the company can go broke, right? If you own somebody's debt, they can not pay you. Right? Gold doesn't have anything like that. It's like the risks around gold are that fewer people will feel the need to protect their wealth, so they'll sell their gold, right? So it's like a purely speculative asset that can't really fail in an absolute sense. But Bitcoin's like the same thing. It's like one of the few assets that is not somebody else's liability, right? It's like there's no performance. Nobody else has to do anything for this asset to not become worthless. That's a kind of weird way of explaining it, but in times of panic, like
that is a weird way to explain it. But it's
like,
good that I get the comparison to gold, kind of. Like, I get what you mean.
It's like, it's not a productive asset. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right? Gold you can use for electronics or whatever, but most of the value, jewelry and whatnot, but most of the value just comes from speculation, investors owning it as like a monetary asset.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin has become the same thing really rapidly. And I actually think that there are already countries like nation states that have bought Bitcoin and just haven't said anything, right?
Wow.
Like China's probably been mining it, and like the government has effectively been mining it for, I think, a long time. But if you're like a smaller nation with like a less stable currency that generally loses lots of value every year, it's a good risk reward sort of bet for a central bank like in Africa or whatever to say, I'm going to put a small amount of our balance sheet, our money in this asset. And if it turns out to be a thing, they'll win big. And if it doesn't turn out to be a thing, they'll lose small, right? So it's like a good asymmetric risk reward.
Yeah.
And so that's probably already happened. And every other kind of investor, pension funds, insurance companies, hedge funds, family offices, literally everyone, retail, have all started to dip their toe into this new asset class, right? And that's why the growth has been astronomical. And now Bitcoin, if you add up the value of all the Bitcoins out there, it's over $1 trillion.
Jesus
right?
Christ. Lord.
When I first looked at the market, it was like 8 billion, right?
Holy shit.
So, I remember when it got to 20 billion, and you think about how you can sort of justify that valuation. But now people are like, well, if you add up the value of all the gold that's been mined, it's like 12 trillion or something.
Yeah.
And so maybe Bitcoin gets to half of that. Maybe it gets to all of it. Maybe it overtakes it, right?
Yeah.
But that's 10x away.
Yeah.
And if gold turns to shit, Bitcoin probably, in the current environment where the fiat money is so screwed, Bitcoin probably reaches a market cap greater than what gold ever did. The gold people were right in the end.
Yeah.
But they were usurped by a better solution, by technology.
Yeah.
The beauty about Bitcoin as well is that the use for gold doesn't really change that much over time. But because Bitcoin is software, you can incrementally improve it over time, right?
Wow.
And there's all these really smart people working out how to make these crypto technologies, faster, more secure, more functional. And so as a long-term investment, do you want to own the inanimate object that doesn't improve over time? Or do you want to own the software that, is, when you look at cryptocurrency as a whole, rapidly evolving. Has huge amounts of really, really smart people and lots of money invested in improving the technology, and fits perfectly into all of these other technology paradigms that are, independently becoming significant, right? So, whether it's video gaming as entertainment, whether it's financial technologies, like all these new fintech companies, for instance, Square, they are big supporters of Bitcoin and, working on that technology as a future solution. You can buy Bitcoin through the Square app, and Jack Dorsey, the CEO, is also the CEO of Twitter. He's a big supporter of it, right? They actually bought Bitcoin as a company, as like a bet, right?
Yeah.
And so did Elon Musk bought quite a lot for Tesla.
Yeah.
Like they bought $1.5 billion worth, which is now worth about twice that. So they got $3 billion worth. And all these other fintech companies like PayPal and whatnot are all getting into this space. Even like Visa and MasterCard, they're like some of the biggest payment companies in the world. They're all integrating crypto technology. So it's like when you invest in this space, you're comparing it to gold, right? There's so much more potential for future utility to be built around this technology than there is like owning gold, which may become marginally more useful if some different industrial function is found for it. But it's not very likely.
What I was going to ask was, God damn it, the phone fucking thing. And then I forgot my question. No, but I was going to ask, so what you're saying, what I'm hearing is, for the people out there, it's not too late to invest in crypto, if anything.
Look, I mean, I think if you don't own any,
yes, I
think it doesn't matter.
Let me break something to you. I do not own any.
Yeah.
So should I?
Yeah, look, I think this is not financial advice, right? If you don't own any, I think it's worth investigating putting a small amount of your net worth into this space, right? That's like, the classic advice that people have given over the years is, put 1% of your money into it, right? And that way, if it turns out to substantially replace the fiat money system, you've done really well. And if you lose, you're not going to feel it, right? So, I would say, like, generally speaking, if you bought the top of the last cycle, why is this not turning off?
It's all right, don't worry. Should we introduce...
I feel like my switch is fucked.
It's all right. Let's introduce Paddy at this moment, shall we?
Sure.
We got Paddy helping behind the scenes.
Does he have a mic?
Yeah, you can say something, though. You'll get picked up by the camera.
Oh, nice. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Are you learning a lot, or you already knew everything?
Mate, this guy's been on top of it for years.
Always learning.
Paddy's an expert.
He's an expert, eh?
Yeah.
I should have had him on this side of the camera.
There's always something to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, nothing that I have said so far would be news to Paddy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that.
He knows his.
He knows his
shit.
stuff.
Yeah.
Look at him. Good on you, Paddy.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah. I need to get involved.
Well, that's the thing. If you had bought the top of the last cycle, like if you had bought at the worst possible time in 2017, fast forward to today, and you'd be up over 100%, right?
Wow.
In the meantime, you would have lost 80%.
Yeah.
So you buy at the top, it goes down 80%. But if you don't sell,
Yeah.
then now you'd be making money again.
Yeah.
I don't think we're at the top of this cycle because the reality is all these like big investors, they've only just dipped the toe in, right? And even though there's a lot of retail interest in it, and generally that's considered bearish if like a whole lot of unsophisticated retail investors pump up an asset.
Yeah.
Generally it's like, oh, it's a bubble, it's going to crash, blah, blah, blah. But I'm fine with that this time because I know that institutions want to own this asset and few of them do, and the ones that do only have a very small amount.
Wow.
And so I think there's a lot more to go in terms of institutional buying, like a lot more,
That's incredible.
orders of magnitude more.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's not too late.
I
Really.
I don't think it's too late. I think it's, when you look at the technology and what it's capable of, it's still very, very early, right?
Wow.
That's one thing you have to keep in mind. Like actually the capability of the technology is not fantastic, right? But
So what do you mean by that? Like, what capability does this technology need to have? How does it...
scalability is a big thing. So right now, the networks are not scalable, which means that the total transactional capacity, Visa can do 50,000 transactions a second.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah,
all computer systems.
Yeah.
Right? They can do 50,000 a second or something like that.
Yeah.
Bitcoin can do like 10,
Yeah.
right? And it's because of the way that it's built, it's very difficult to scale these technologies and maintain the properties of, you know, decentralization, which is what makes these technologies unique is that they're not controlled by a central party. Nobody has the ability to say, you can't do that transaction, I'm going to freeze your account,
Yeah.
blah, 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 right? You know, the government can't arbitrarily change or block transactions or account balances or anything like this, right?
That's fantastic.
That's why you can use it for illegal activity.
Yeah.
Because
All right, so-
it's decentralized. Because it's decentralized, it makes it hard to scale the technology, right, in like a roundabout way. But so that's an issue. There are a whole lot of other ways of looking at the capability of the technology.
Well, that makes sense. I get what you mean now by that.
Yeah.
It's funny to think that the existing system has capabilities, like the tech is bound by the capabilities of our current technology. You know what I mean? Like Visa doing 50,000 transactions a second.
Yeah.
It's just funny to think that, like, what's the difference between that and Bitcoin?
Well, yeah, I mean, the when you just have one company controlling everything, it's easier to build
Right.
massive
of course.
capacity,
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
But when you distribute the system, like I can run a Bitcoin node on my computer, right,
Yeah.
over a normal internet connection. But if you look at how Visa system works, it's like they have server racks in a data center and everything's
yeah.
hooked up at like an industrial level, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, I've got a weird question.
Mm.
Like, it seems like there's a lot of mysticism about the creation of Bitcoin. Does anyone know who made it and like where it started and what the hell's going on?
So we know the pseudonym of the person or people. You know, like people say, oh, you know, maybe Shakespeare was like a group of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's an element of that with the creation of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Maybe Satoshi Nakamoto is the moniker, right? The sobriquet.
What?
The nickname.
Right.
It was like they came up with a pseudonym.
Yeah, and what is it?
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah, so it's like a Japanese name,
Yeah.
but the person most likely was American. At least that's what some evidence suggests.
Well,
Right?
so no one knows.
So nobody knows who it is. The speculation is basically it's all the core technology is like cryptography, right? So the person that created it knew about cryptography. They're a computer scientist. They're a decent-ish programmer, not that great, right? Because we would see the source code. It's all open source.
Yeah.
So we know how well engineered the first version was,
Yeah.
right? You get clues about someone's capability from the code, right?
Yeah.
And
So we're living in the Matrix.
it could be this guy, Hal Finney, who was a computer scientist and had like cryptography expertise.
Yeah.
And he has died, I think, in 2011, something like that. People speculate that it's this guy who's alive, Nick Szabo, who invented a similar-ish technology that didn't quite tick all the boxes for... He sort of created a precursor to Bitcoin. There were a few precursors to Bitcoin that didn't really work because they had various flaws. Or it could be someone that we don't really know well. It could even have come out of the government, right?
Yeah.
You know, the NSA could have created Bitcoin.
Dude,
Right,
what a conspiracy.
Yeah, you know, the Chinese could have created it to undermine the US dollar. Like there's any range of possibilities, right?
Yeah.
But no, nobody knows who it is. And they own 1 million Bitcoin, basically, because that was like mined in the early days
Yeah.
by the creator. You know, this guy...
1 billion Bitcoin.
This Aussie guy who was like an academic computer scientist, came out and said that he was the creator of Bitcoin, but he was basically trying to scam people.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to get a lawsuit for saying that. But
Really?
he loves to sue people. Loves to sue people.
Well, if this podcast gets that far so that he hears it, then
I'll be happy. He's probably got some algorithm that like crawls the internet looking for people sledging him,
Yeah.
so he can like automatically start subpoena you or whatever.
Well, you better not get this pod taken down, dude. Getting cancelled at episode 7 is not a good sign.
Yeah, no, don't worry. If he attacks you, you'll get lots of support from the community.
Perfect.
So you'll be rich. Someone will just send you money for no reason.
Yeah, well, that sounds.
They'll be like, "Oh, you need to fund your
sounds like a
defense.
plan.
Here's $1 million." Yeah.
Perfect. Pat, like, is there anything you're burning to ask over there?
Nothing comes to mind right now. But, I mean,
Do you still know all of this?
yeah, I think I know most of it. There's so
We're not breaking much new ground here.
Like,
if I'm honest.
did you know about Nick Stevens?
Nick
First,
Szabo.
like, did you know all that?
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Did you know all this?
Yeah.
Bro, am I
told you, Paddy.
Am I the only one on earth that doesn't know this?
Paddy has a high base of knowledge. Don't underestimate.
be annoyed about how stupid I am in this podcast.
Well, it depends how much they know. Funnily enough, I'm consistently impressed now with the average person's knowledge.
Really?
Because 3 years ago nobody knew anything, and now I'll just like meet someone that I never met before, and somehow the conversation will come to crypto.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, I'm like, I've got like wrapped Bitcoin in Aave. I'm earning interest on my wrapped Bitcoin. I'm like, that's extremely impressive that like,
I have no idea
this
what that
random
means.
person, is taking his Bitcoin, getting it like reissued on Ethereum and then lending it out on like a decentralized lending platform. Like, average people are doing stuff like, younger people that are a bit more technically inclined.
Yeah.
But like, people are doing that en masse, right?
Jesus.
And so, those technologies didn't exist. Like, we were investing in the very first iterations of these decentralized finance technologies before they had even launched, right? So in like late 2017, 2018, we invested in MakerDAO when it was like the very, very first iteration of that project. And that was like the only financial product that had been built on Ethereum, which is this crypto network. And subsequently, a whole bunch of things launched kind of in 2018 and 2019. But now, like, average people are interacting with these technologies, and that massively outperformed my expectations for its adoption, right? Happened way faster, reached a much broader audience. Because I was always a bit cynical because the technology was so limited in particular ways that I was like, well, nobody's ever going to pay a $20 fee to do a trade on Uniswap or whatever. And now that happens, 50,000 times a day, 100,000 times a day or more. And that, so there's a lot of rapid expansion of the broad knowledge. That's the beauty of the internet. People can learn things really quickly. And like, because, people have been bored, stuck at home, a lot of people's attention has gone into like investing in different things, right? Like they said, the retail trader boom, like, like GameStop and all this stuff, like Robinhood in America.
Yeah.
That was basically like, millions of bored 20 to 30-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like,
too much time on their hands.
Too much time on their hands. They're still working. They're just working from home.
Yeah.
So they're probably saving money.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're not, out partying or whatever.
Yeah.
And that just like drew so much interest into stocks. And then you got like people who'd never bought a stock before suddenly trading options and all this stuff. And like the knowledge of the internet just, people are probably risking more and doing things that they shouldn't be doing based on their level of knowledge.
Yeah.
But everyone needs to start somewhere, right? And I think the knowledge does build over time. And so there's been this huge appetite for working out how to invest your money. And this crypto was just like in the right place at the right time to get a lot of that attention. And I think young people have an affinity to it because, especially in America, where like the banking system is so terrible.
Yeah.
Like for me to like send you money from bank to bank is like doing like a wire transfer. It costs you like $20 and takes 2 days or something. Here it's like much better because we have like the MPP, Pay ID. I can send your phone number money through banks. But everywhere,
I fucking hate that.
everyone over there uses Venmo and Square and all these things because the banks suck so much. And
yeah,
so
see, it's funny like putting it in that context. That,
Yeah.
Like I always think about it in Australian terms, and I'm like, it's not that hard to fucking change money. It's like,
dude, our
Yeah.
banking system is so much better from like a consumer use
yeah,
functionality standpoint. Our banking system is massively better than America.
wow,
Right?
yeah. Well, it seems that way because I don't even think
Yeah.
about it really ever. Like
Yeah.
I rarely have an issue with like.
'Cause we have a much more consolidated system. We have 4 banks. When they create a new payment network, they all basically chip in and own the network between each other. In America, it's like much more fragmented, and there are like islands of like different sort of sections of the network that are not hooked up together properly, and it makes everything super clunky and expensive. Yeah, but you know, in America and like other countries where they don't have banking, financial products, emerging markets and whatnot, they all love crypto, you know, because all you need is a smartphone and you can send money anywhere in the world with no intermediaries.
Yeah.
And, you know, as an investment, it's performed really well. So it has a positive feedback loop, right, that drives more interest.
Paddy had a question like 20 minutes ago. What?
What do you reckon about the environmental concerns with Bitcoin mining?
So, so Paddy said, "What do you think about the environmental
This is
concerns?"
what we call in Australia a Dorothy Dixer. This question, because he knows exactly what my view is.
repeat the question in case I didn't hear it.
It's what do I think about the environmental concerns around Bitcoin mining? Basically, Bitcoin mining is a hugely energy intensive process, right? Because basically people buy, they're called ASICs, application specific integrated circuit, which is a specific kind of chip that has been designed to do nothing but mine Bitcoin, right? It's not the making of the chips, but it's the fact that people, you know, if I want to start a mining business, right, I'll basically buy 10,000 of these little computers and I'll put them all in racks, and then they consume a lot of electricity mining Bitcoin, right? And so I think right now Bitcoin mining in its totality consumes the same amount of electricity as like, is it like Holland? What country are we up to now? It's going up all the time, right? So it's like originally it was like, you know, it consumes the same amount of electricity as like Barbados or like Mauritius or something. And then it was like, you know, Hong Kong. And now it's like we're in that kind of middle, you know, population of 30 to 50 million kind of thing. I don't know. I think it's New Zealand. We've overtaken the energy consumption of New Zealand.
Jeez.
All these kinds of things. So obviously people are like, well, you know, greenhouse gases, blah, 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 CO2. And the concern is legitimate, right? Because a percentage of that electricity is supplied via coal or whatever dirty sources. But it's becoming less of a problem over time, right? And there's a really powerful dynamic that over time will drive all energy production in the fullness of time is going to be renewable anyway, right? This is like a certainty now, right? Already, like solar panels and wind farms produce cheaper electricity than coal power plants, right? That we crossed that threshold a few years ago, right? Like if you get like a chart up of the dollar per kilowatt hour pricing of solar panels, and it's basically like a shit falling from heaven. Like it's just cratering, right? And all these like optimizations into like wind farming, like just like small changes to like the blade designs and stuff create massive efficiencies. They work out better places to put them. They have all these different technologies. All like the renewable stuff, you know, everything will be renewable in, I think, a surprisingly short amount of time. You know, India and China and whatever will, you know, they build so much infrastructure around coal that it takes time to, you don't just want to knock all those things down and rebuild them, rebuild wind farms and solar.
Yeah.
You want to kind of run these power plants down through their useful life and then build something better the next time, right? That's kind of how they'll do it. But anyways, all energy is going to be renewable anyway. So, you know, in the fullness of time, there will be no CO2 impact from Bitcoin, or it will be very small, right? But already, Bitcoin mining is hugely biased to certain renewable sources. And there's a really good reason for this, which is that if I build a hydro dam power station, I have to build that in a very specific place, right? Where there's a big flow of water, right? That specific place is not going to be necessarily proximate to big sources of demand, cities, industrial, whatever. So what happens when people build these hydro power plants or like geothermal electricity or whatever, you end up with a massive surplus of electricity because you've had to build that stuff in really specific places. And it's not necessarily next to demand. And you can build transmission lines, but you know, there's like a cost to that, and you get attenuation. So electricity.
They lose efficiency over certain distances.
But what that means is that electricity next to a hydro plant is basically free. Right. Because electricity is all market pricing. And what you basically have is a massive generation source and not much demand around it. So you get huge surplus of energy production, which means the price is almost approaching zero, right? So if you're a Bitcoin miner, your costs are buying the chips and paying for electricity, right? Bitcoin mining is hugely competitive, so you will build the miners next to the cheapest sources of electricity. All of those are renewable, right?
That's such a cool, weird thing to think about.
So there's a few places that like are really big for crypto mining that you wouldn't necessarily think of. Iceland.
I would have thought that.
Right. Georgia, the country, right?
Didn't even know that was a country.
So Georgia is like near like Armenia. It's like south of Russia before Turkey. There's like a bunch of countries in that part of the world, and they basically have lots of hydro dams. So there's lots of Bitcoin mining there. Canada, lots of hydro dams, lots of Bitcoin mining there. There are a whole bunch of publicly listed mining companies that trade on the stock exchange. 100% of their production is sourced by renewables. Not always hydro, like Sweden and stuff. Like there's a whole bunch of like wind and whatnot that gets used. The other thing they do now in America is like where they have these natural gas wells. Natural gas has to flow at a particular pressure in order for it to be commercially viable. Right? And sometimes you'll build a well, it'll flow at a commercial rate for a period of time, and then you lose some pressure. And there's still gas there, but it's not quite high pressure enough to make it commercial, right? And so what they do is they basically build a Bitcoin mining rig next to the well and use that gas that would sort of otherwise be wasted or not used, right? So right now, Bitcoin mining is basically hugely, you can build a Bitcoin mine wherever you want in the world, hugely remote places, because all you need is an electricity source and an internet connection, and internet connections can be established anywhere, right?
I didn't know that, but
Well, I mean, you know, via satellite,
you
can have an internet connection anywhere. Usually there's 4G, so, you know, cellular connectivity. Like, you know, I've been to the Rosua region of the Himalayas in Nepal, and there's cell connectivity there.
Really? But I've been
right?
to like fucking Lakes and Clare in Australia, and there wasn't fucking.
Australia is a
So,
unique
like, what the
beast.
hell's going on here?
We just have terrible cellular networks, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, there's networks around, right? So you can build them basically wherever you want, and you just build them where the electricity is cheapest, and that's almost always next to a renewable energy source.
It's so amazing how like it's very poetic, Lou. Don't you think? How like the Matrix is going to take over soon. Like we've got these beautiful natural sources of power. Then we've got a hydro plant there making electricity. And next to that, another little bit of technology that's going to eventually like take over the space. And then that's going to like power the earth, and it makes all our money. All next to these like massive like waterfalls and cool like.
It is, yeah. When you put it that way, it is poetic. Ultimately, in time, probably the method of Bitcoin mining will change in a way that it doesn't require all this computing, all this energy consumption, all these chips. There are other crypto networks that have a different system called proof of stake, where you don't need to do any of that stuff, right? So there's very little energy consumption, and they have a different mechanism for creating new currency, validating transactions and whatnot. So there's already alternative technologies that negate the need for so much electricity consumption. But there's also benefits to Bitcoin's design that you have to consider, that are advantages. That stuff gets really technical, like what's better, proof of work or proof of stake. But that...
Do you know that? Proof of work, proof of stake?
Bitcoin's got proof of work.
So you're not going to stump Paddy. You're not going to.
Dude.
You're not going to.
You impressed me today, bro. You haven't said a word, and you've impressed me the most in this room.
I try my best.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Well, he's invested. He should know.
Yeah.
You got to...
Thanks.
How are we going with everything?
I think
Is it
it's
all
looking
still
good.
working?
It looks like it's working.
Is
But
everything
one
working?
mic seems louder than the other.
Yeah, that's all
Is that
right.
normal?
As long as they're both actually working and the
They're going
thing's
up.
red and is it recording and everything?
Yeah, I think I found my new calling.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What?
Microphone technician.
Yeah, just looking at the screen.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think what is an interesting concept about, you brought up the Matrix. So now Elon Musk is a supporter of Bitcoin, bought a bunch for Tesla.
Yeah.
You got to remember as well, Elon Musk co-founded PayPal. So the guy knows about payment systems, right?
I was thinking about that when PayPal invested also into Bitcoin.
PayPal didn't invest, but they're like integrating the technology. But Square invested, Tesla invested. This company MicroStrategy has this crazy strategy of borrowing money and then buying Bitcoin with it.
Yeah.
There's lots of there's a bunch of public companies that have bought it basically.
But anyway, get back to the Matrix point.
Yeah, so Elon, obviously runs SpaceX as well, right?
Yeah.
And he's going to go to Mars. He's going to make off-planet, civilizations. What currency do you think we're going to be using in Mars or off-planet, right? Do you think we'll use US dollars on Mars?
You're a smart man, Lou.
Or do you think, the guy who's already bought Bitcoin and, is taking us there?
To Mars, yeah.
What's going to be, why would you use a terrestrial money system in an interplanetary world, right? Obviously, we're going to use cryptocurrency. And so I think whenever you look at like a frontier of modern technology that involves money, and generally speaking, all of the frontiers do in some way, I think increasingly you'll see the default will be to adopt this technology, if not primarily, if not exclusively, then as like an option. It's like in-game currency, VR worlds, all this sort of thing. When we start getting into the Matrix there, right?
Yeah.
Which is, it's
tomorrow,
basically here, right?
Yeah.
I think all of those, there's a massive incentive as well for these game developers. You might think, video gaming, how relevant an example is that? It's the biggest entertainment industry in the world now.
You mentioned it
right?
earlier. You mentioned it earlier, video gaming as entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, it's bigger than movies, music. It's the biggest thing by far now, right?
Yeah.
So it's the biggest entertainment industry. People are going to be spending more and more time, bigger percentage of their day in these worlds, right? Eventually some people who, it's probably not healthy, but they will basically primarily live in these worlds, right? Because people people play World of Warcraft for 3 days straight.
I was about to
right?
say that.
Yeah,
100%. There's people that already live in the video game world. They just don't have the headset on.
Yeah.
People living a normal life in Second Life.
Yeah, Paddy brought up Second Life.
Yeah.
People living a regular second life in a video game, in life.
Paddy's an expert on Second Life and all things money laundering. Anti-money laundering.
Anti-money laundering. Anti-money laundering.
Yeah.
Geez, all right. Should we get into non-fungies?
Non-fungies.
Because it's a new thing that's been thrown around.
Yeah.
I've heard it at the bar last night when we were getting pissed. People were talking.
Oh, really?
Yeah, dude.
At Chop House, there was non-fungi talk, or pre-Chop House.
At Flynn's. The Flynn.
Yeah.
At the Flynn, there was some non-fungi talk. I was like, I can't believe this. But they were bankers.
Yeah.
It's probably a good sign. Anyway, tell me about it. I don't know. Tell me about it like I don't know a goddamn thing.
Yeah. So money is fungible, right? If you get two $5 notes, they're the same thing.
Yeah. Perfect.
Right.
Start. Go.
So, money is fungible. Bitcoin is okay. An expert might disagree with me, but Bitcoin is fungible.
Yeah.
Ethereum is fungible. Monero. These are all cryptocurrencies, right?
Yeah.
They're all fungible assets. Your Bitcoin's the same as my Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's all the same shit, right?
Yeah.
There are, hundreds of these different fungible assets that are effectively like currency.
Yeah.
Right. Or, again, experts will disagree.
That's really interesting.
Or nitpick on these things, right?
Yeah.
But a non-fungible token is basically a crypto asset that is unique, right? So rather than it being the same as a whole class of asset, right? Your Bitcoin's the same as my Bitcoin. What if my Bitcoin's, the only pink Bitcoin, right? So that's kind of what a non-fungible token is, just a crypto asset, a digital asset that is unique. And so what people have been doing is saying, well, this property of unique crypto assets, how can that be applied to a whole lot of different use cases, right? So here's one that you probably haven't heard of, a use case that I think is easier to understand than the art stuff, right? What if you had a non-fungible token that represented you as an individual, right? So it's your digital identity is effectively represented in a non-fungible token. So you can, if you're interacting with different crypto systems, borrowing, lending, trading, or whatever, you can identify yourself through, ownership of this non-fungible token, which you can then send around to different accounts if you want, right? It can represent any individual thing, right? But people are like, well, we can apply it to all sorts of digital goods, right? To trading cards, this NBA Top Shots is a big thing. There are already other trading cards that are basically each card is unique. Right, some are more valuable than others in a collectible sort of sense, right? Like the LeBron James dunk is more valuable than the third string Utah Jazz player, right?
Yeah.
And so, where people had these different games where you would trade cards and do whatever. Right, it's basically creating a a new dimension of scarcity around these assets or around these cards, right? These digital goods. Because before, you can just arbitrarily create them,
Yeah.
right? If you're the owner of NBA Top Shots, the game, you can arbitrarily create them, much like fiat money.
Yeah.
But now you can set rules, right? And then only a certain number of these things are created, and they're digitally scarce,
Yeah.
right? And so they can trade really easily between people
Yeah.
in a transparent way. And so the transparency and liquidity makes them more valuable. They're like scarce, transparent, and liquid. So they're like easily transported. If Patty was in Siberia right now, we could trade these cards, digitally.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
And so it's like a global market of trading for these scarce digital items, right?
Yeah.
And then people have thought, well, we can use it as like a sort of copyright tool for art, right? So it's like I can represent the ownership of a digital art with one of these. All art pieces, well, most art pieces are unique,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in order to represent ownership of that art piece with the crypto asset, you would need a unique token. That's why a non-fungible token is a useful paradigm for attaching, basically digital rights for, different art, right? So people create a, animation or like a graphic or whatever, sell it as digital art, and the person buys the NFT.
Yes.
They then own the NFT, and that represents ownership of the art. Now, if you're an artist, a digital artist, you control your own work. You control the copyright, you control everything. The platform in which it gets distributed, right? If you're creating digital art and selling it, you can create digital art and sell it once, the traditional way. Someone buys it and then maybe they on-sell it if they want. Or you can do the NFT thing, sell the NFT online, and there are basically systems where every time that artwork trades again in the secondary market, so I'm the artist, I sell it to you, and then 2 years later you sell it to Patty for twice as much, I get 10% of that secondary sale. Wow. Right? So it's like built into the system to pay the artist every time the art trades a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time. They get 10% of the price, no matter what the price is. The price could be 1,000 times higher, right? And so if you're an artist, you control how your work is distributed. It's an obviously better choice for you, right? Do I sell it once, or do I get a clip of every secondary trade of this thing, right? So artists will gravitate naturally to this solution because it's economically better for them, right?
It's absurd to think that artists have the wherewithal to know to do that. That's absurd.
The thing is that it works particularly well with digital art, and digital artists are going to be naturally more technically capable, right? It's not going to be some 70-year-old guy doing oil paintings, right? But as I said, consistently surprised with how quickly the knowledge spreads, right? And all this stuff is reasonably easy to use as well, right? Like, it's not as easy as like our consumer apps that are honed to perfection by designers and whatnot. This is all a bit more clunky, but it's not that bad, right? And people can wrap their heads around it. So the art thing is like, that's one use case. And right now it's like there's basically a massive bubble in NFT art. The thing is that even the shittest NFT art has risen in value substantially.
It's ridiculous.
As a result of all of this interest. And that to me is nonsensical, right?
Yeah.
Art should not be worth more because of the technology used to manage its copyright.
Yeah.
That should not be relevant at all, right?
Yeah.
And nor will it be relevant in the fullness of time.
Yeah.
Right?
Very good.
So your shitty NFT that looks like trash in time will be worthless,
Yes.
right? And the thing is about NFTs is that there's nothing capping the supply of new artwork,
Yeah.
right? I could draw a squiggle,
Yeah.
scan it, upload it to one of these things and be like, buy my NFT, right?
Yeah.
People do that. And so, you know, there'll be a big crash in this market, and then you'll start to see some more of the interesting use cases. There's so many different things that will be able to be done. I'm not an expert on NFTs. Like, there are people that, it's something that I've been very skeptical about from the beginning. You know, it's like I gave you that identity example. Like, there are ways of doing that that don't require NFTs. You know, yeah, I mean, it probably is. You know, the whole thing about like stamping an artwork with an NFT and selling it, like, you know, the classic cynical thing that people say is, well, I can just screenshot your NFT art, then I've got a copy of it.
Yeah.
Right? That's totally true. You know, you can steal
Yeah, you can steal
NFT art.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop reproduction of the actual digital image. What it stops is reproduction of the ownership rights, which is a sort of novel and weird concept. But like,
I understand it, I get it.
you know, it's
Yeah, because it's a really good point, because if you do just compare it to regular kind of physical artworks, it's like, bro, 1,000 artists are capable of painting a painting similar to that looks exactly the same as the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
But the Mona Lisa is in the Louvre.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's just like, the ownership is the main kind of ownership deal.
It's like the record of provenance.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you go onto Sotheby's and, you know, look at some crazy artwork that's getting auctioned off for £1 million or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? The most important thing is not the painting, it's the provenance, right? Is this the real thing?
Yeah, of
right?
course.
Is everything,
yeah.
right? Because as you said, people copy art. There are these companies, right? All they do is analyze artwork to work out if it's real or not. And they go through all these crazy like chemical processes.
Yeah.
It's like forensics basically.
Yeah, without
to work out
ruining the painting.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
absurd.
Yeah. The issue of like verifying art and its provenance, that is what has the value, right?
Yes.
And so the NFT is just that in a really simple and elegant solution.
Yeah.
You know? And so
It's amazing to think that all of these kind of this crypto world is just someone or like, you know, a group of people or something to solve the issues that are kind of that make themselves clear in our physical world.
yeah.
That's so crazy.
And you know what? This technology was not created to, you know, solve provenance in art. It's a generic technology which has been applied to this use case.
Right.
Right. Cryptocurrency in general is a generic technology that's been applied to all these weird use cases.
Really?
That, you know, are enabled. Well, I mean, it's like
What is cryptology? You brought
Crypt-
that up. What is it? Cryptonomy. What the fuck? What was it that you said before?
cryptography.
Cryptography.
Yeah. So cryptography is just the discipline of code creation, right? So how can I send you a message that you can understand but Paddy can't, right? So generally speaking, it was used in a military context, right?
As everything always is.
You know, I need to be able to send secret messages to people,
Yeah.
right? So I don't actually have any historical ancient examples, but I know that they exist where basically you would write out the message, encode it in a way that if you applied a specific rule to the gibberish that it turns into,
I get the meme.
you get the message back, right? And so in the Second World War, the Germans came up with the Enigma Machine, right? Have you seen that movie with Benedict Cumberbatch?
No.
The Imitation Game?
Maybe.
So it's a good movie, you should watch it. So the Germans came up with a machine that would take orders that would be transmitted over radio and encrypt them, encode them, right? And it was basically like a mechanical computer, right? That would take a message, apply a certain rule, turn it into gibberish, and then they'd send out the gibberish, and then the people would, with their Enigma machine, be able to decode it,
Yeah.
right? And the British they basically invented the first computer to break the encryption, right?
Wow.
And that's what, was a significant factor in turning the war, was the breaking of the Enigma code.
Wow.
And so encryption now is all basically complex math that is used to turn plain text messages into gibberish that are basically impossible to break, right? Like, there are always like flaws and things found in different encryption algorithms that maybe governments know of, but they don't tell people, so they can kind of use them when they want to, right? But generally speaking, encryption's like really strong now. And that's why like Peter Dutton and whatever politicians are like, Apple's got to let us into the phones because we can't get into the phones unless they create some backdoor in because they can't get past the encryption. So cryptography is just, the discipline of encoding messages so they can't be read by other people.
Wow.
But it became useful in cryptocurrency for totally different reasons. It's mostly around basically, it gets super technical. I don't think we really want to delve in it, but it's basically like verifying the transactions are valid. And controlling the ability. How can you send money that you own, but I can't send your money? That's all done with encryption, with Bitcoin, right? Okay. It's done with encryption with banking, right? All that shit is based on encryption. PayPal is all just encryption. Visa are like the world leaders in, specific sub-disciplines of encryption. All that banking, finance, everything is, rights to like spend money, push transactions out, pull transactions. All of those rights are managed through cryptography.
Wow.
And identity, fraud prevention, they're all just different forms of cryptography. So it's a massive discipline in general.
Wow.
And, every time you access a website, it's a HTTPS, is an encrypted connection,
Wow.
That's your encryption for you.
Well, where are we at, Pat?
Where are we at?
I think it's beer o'clock. Can I request a beer from young Paddy?
Absolutely. We're at 1:12 and 36 seconds.
A minute 12. We're at 1 minute 12 in.
What beer do you want?
What is that, an hour and 12 minutes?
Asahi?
Sahi?
I'll get a beer.
What do you want?
I'll just have the same, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how many Asahis there are.
Oh, like whatever. If
there are many beers
Yeah.
of different sorts.
We covered a lot there, Loom.
We did.
Did we?
Well, I mean, it's all pretty basic stuff.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know any of that.
Well then, I mean, they call it a rabbit hole because once you start delving into it, the good thing is, with investing in general, if you buy a small amount of something, you create the incentive to research it more.
Yeah.
So I reckon if you just bought some Bitcoin and some Ethereum or whatever, just because you own it, you become interested in it. You know? And so that's what drives like people's rapid advancement of knowledge. That's why Paddy knows so much.
Yeah,
because he's invested, right?
I think I might have to do the same. I think I'm going to do the same.
I think, even as just like you're interested in technology in general, engineering, whatever.
Yeah. No, the way that you broke it down, it definitely sparks my interest. It's just so interesting how it's got its roots in so many different parts of just like do you know what I mean? Yeah. Different industries and different weird like the energy creation problem and like you know what I mean, like the backing of the gold. Yeah, it's so crazy. Yeah. So you've convinced me that it's definitely going to be the next thing.
Well, I mean, it's a thing now.
Yeah.
It's a big thing now as well. Like $1 trillion is not a small.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the next only thing. It's the next gold. Should we do shout outs? Do you want to do a shout out? Do you want to do your Instagram or something like that? Or like what?
You can follow me on Twitter.
Oh yeah, follow
Yeah.
Loom on Twitter.
What
What is it? We'll put it in the description though, but as well.
Yeah,
But just
put in the show notes, as
yeah,
they call it.
yeah.
What about your FTX referral code?
Oh yeah, I'll put that in as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanna trade high leverage crypto, I got the hookup.
Cheers, lad.
You can save money on fees. We haven't even talked about aliens though.
Yeah, bro. Like, we can. Do you want to talk about aliens? We got eight. We
Do
just
you want
cracked,
to talk
we
about
just
aliens?
cracked a beer.
We did. No, I've heard that marks the beginning of the alien chat, does it not?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you want to talk about aliens? Tell me about aliens. They're here, from what I hear. From what I hear, like,
What have you heard? Tell
Well-
me what you've heard, Andre.
what do you mean?
What have you heard?
I've just heard that, like, you know, the information has been unclassified, declassified.
What information to
The
your
information that
knowledge?
we've had, contact with alien species that we know. We know of certain different types of species. We've had contact. We've used their technology.
That hasn't been declassified.
But is that the truth? Is that the case?
Maybe it is. I don't know.
Well, you tell me what you've heard. Because you seem like you got something in the fucking cannon.
No, I mean I don't know anything.
What do you know, Lou? What the hell?
I
do
only
you
know what they tell me.
What the hell do you? What the hell does he know?
We need Tom DeLonge here.
Tom DeLonge, yeah. I
like how that beer opens like that.
yeah, it's a handy feature if you really want to punch it.
Yeah, that's a cracker. Yeah, so tell me.
No, what was declassified, so to speak, was a bunch of footage from
Oh yeah, about the Tic Tac.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I know more than I let on. Yeah, but it's all from just listening to friggin' podcasts.
Yeah. Well, yeah. What's wrong with that?
I don't know. Yeah, apparently, like, you know, there's this thing that bends gravity at will, and like how it goes, it's like almost teleports. It's how fast it is. Tell me.
Yeah. So there was footage. The U.S. Department of Defense released a bunch of, especially like thermal camera footage from usually FA-18
Fighter jets.
carrier jets, right? And they released like 3 videos, all of strange objects doing improbable things,
Yeah.
right? And one of the pilots that actually witnessed the Tic Tac one, you know, is this guy David Fravor,
Yeah.
and he's done a bunch of interviews,
Yeah.
including with
get him on the podcast.
Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, a bunch of others.
Yeah.
So he's actually almost done a weird sort of PR campaign about these things. I mean, obviously, people are coming to him and asking him
Yeah.
to come on, right?
Of course.
But he is saying yes,
Yeah.
right, and doing these interviews. You know, I don't know if those images show. If you look at the data and assume that all of the data is genuine, i.e., hasn't been faked in any way.
Yeah.
Basically, there's an object that's caught on radar
Yeah.
that's seen traveling at ridiculously high speeds
Yeah.
and maneuvering in a way that suggests that it's not using
Propulsion technology.
current technology,
Yeah.
right? Something that David Fravor says is that, you know, if humans had created that technology 10 years ago, we'd know about it today by now, definitely, because it's too valuable to keep under wraps for that long.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I agree with him in the sense that I think that if humans have worked this out, we would know about it.
What if we're just working it out now?
No, because the Tic Tac video is from 2004.
Oh shit.
Right?
Oh shit.
You know, that's 17 years ago.
Oh god damn it, Lou.
Right? That's how old we are.
God damn it, Lou.
The similar-ish encounters are referred to by different reliable sources.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so if the data is genuine, I agree with Fravor when he says that pretty much at this point it has to be out of this world. When he first encountered it, it was possible that it was a human technology.
Yeah.
There's no way we'd be here 17 years later and not have it out in public, right?
Right. So are the aliens using cryptos? That's my next question. Pat?
I don't know.
Lou? Of course they are.
I think that the aliens would be able to break all of our cryptography like that.
Yeah.
So when we do, like, what's it called? The Drake equation basically says that it's a mathematical certainty that there is life elsewhere in the universe, right?
Yeah.
So when eventually we do meet aliens, and
Yeah.
if they are a sophisticated life form
Yeah.
that's capable of, traveling to us and interacting with us, I think it would be trivial for them to break our cryptography, but they'll just have a better solution that they'll give us, right?
Yeah.
If they're not hostile.
Yeah, I reckon they're going to be hostile.
If they're, I mean, I don't.
Whoever colonizes a new place, not hostile. Come on, dog.
Well, if they're already visiting us, I think if they wanted what we had, they would have taken it
maybe
already.
we got nothing for them.
I think it was what's his name? The scientist guy that does the cosmos and whatnot.
Neil deGrasse.
Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Remember him saying, if aliens come here, they're definitely going to destroy us. Like, we shouldn't look forward to that prospect of meeting aliens. I just think that's like so
Pessimistic.
It's not even pessimistic. I think it's illogical.
Come on, bro.
Right? Because
I agree with you.
if aliens could reach us, they probably already have.
Yeah.
And if they were going to destroy us, they already would have taken our shit. Right? The fact that it hasn't happened already
What if it happens right now?
suggests that,
We see in
there
that
they
window
are.
just fucking...
We're well protected here, this close to Woolloomooloo, though.
That's true. That is true. We're in view of the naval ships.
Yeah.
They have cannons on them, they can shoot down the goddamn Tic-Tac.
Yeah.
No.
No. Hey? That's right. That's right.
So what else? Tell me more about the aliens. What have we...
So no, I was going to make a point, right? I was going to make a point.
I apologize. I always get in trouble for this, but at least I did it during the alien talk. And I did it anyway, go.
The government is intentionally, the US government's intentionally put out these videos to pique people's interest, right?
Yes.
Now, they're either telling the truth in the sense that the data is real, they haven't faked these videos, David Fravor isn't some kind of psyop, his account is genuine, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
If that's the case and the data is real,
Yeah.
there's strong evidence that there's some kind of sophisticated life form among us, right?
Yeah.
If the data is fake, I think that is less interesting, but still a very interesting prospect. Why would the government be trying to convince people that aliens are a thing?
Oh my god.
Like what
Loom,
incentive?
You've just made this so interesting.
What incentive?
You're right.
There's like each part, there are two parts.
You're right.
And both of them are really interesting.
Yeah,
Right?
that
It's
is
like,
so interesting. What are they thinking?
What?
Yeah, because I think it's unlikely. Like, it was funny when you were like, if the data is real, if they're not lying, if they haven't faked it, if the guy's not a psyop, I was like, that is very possible that is the case. I wouldn't put it past them, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I would not put that past them.
so I'm not going to name him, but I met this guy who's a, well-known crypto entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I met him in San Francisco. Really smart dude. He's Russian, right?
Hectic.
And we were talking about
Russians.
these videos.
Yeah.
Right.
These same videos that we're discussing right now. Yeah.
And he was basically like, well, it's possible that the government wants you to think that there are aliens, right?
Yeah.
Of course, like this is a guy that grew up in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
He knows a thing or two about propaganda and psyops and shit, right? If you look at, so like Bill Clinton is like the most establishment, political figure. The Clintons are like super establishment, really like juiced into the intelligence community.
Yeah.
You know, happy to start wars that, you know, achieve, you know, whatever weird goals for the military-industrial complex, this kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Bill Clinton in interviews on like Jimmy Kimmel and shit like that
Yeah.
has been like, oh, you know, we should open the files, you know, because there's stuff that he's kind of hinted towards it, right?
Really?
Yeah. There's this group which Paddy actually mentioned. Tom DeLonge is the head of this group called To the Stars Academy
Is it
of
the Blink 182?
exactly.
Yeah.
This group has like former senior intelligence people as part of it, right?
Yeah.
When you look at it, so it's funny, this thing actually, they did like a crowdfunding campaign for this company.
Yeah.
And so they had to file documents with the government being like, this is what we're raising the money for, blah, blah, blah. You read it, it just reads like a scam, right? Like, because I actually read the SEC documents for this, To the Stars Academies of Arts and Science, or whatever it is. Go and, anyone who's interested in this topic, they probably, if you're interested in the topic, you probably know about this company and Tom DeLonge and all these people. No, people who are
the company, but
people
no one's
who
read
are
the thing.
no, exactly. Nobody's read the thing,
Yeah.
but people who are interested in this topic will know Tom DeLonge. They'll know the company.
Yeah.
They'll know all this stuff, right? Go and read the SEC document, and they're basically like, we got all these government people. We're going to do a few things. We're going to make media, like Netflix documentaries and shit, that gets people interested in aliens, right? We're going to lobby the government for funding to research whether aliens exist or not. They have senior former government people, right? So they're in a position to do that lobbying.
Yeah.
And we're also going to...
This is in the document?
Yeah. We're also going to investigate their propulsion technology, right? So they're like, we're gonna make pro-alien propaganda.
Mm.
We're going to lobby the government for funding to do research on whether they exist or not. And we're also going to make anti-gravity spaceships, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing a crowdfunding campaign, like a Kickstarter for this, basically. Well, they were trying to. I don't think it succeeded. And all of these people, the advisors, you can look at their financial accounts because they're raising money. And you can see that the company has lost a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
But it's not cash that they've lost. They basically paid all of these advisors in shares, right? Which you book as a loss. And so all of these kind of former government people, or even current government people, I think some of them, maybe not, maybe that's illegal in America, I'm not sure. They all have shares in this company that's trying to create hype about aliens and then get lots of government funding as a result of that hype.
Yeah,
right?
that's fucked.
And you're like, oh, that looks a bit suspicious, right? So that Tom DeLonge and To the Academies of Arts and Science thing looks sus.
Yeah, and like there's
Right.
definitely there is definitely then incentive for the current government to release those videos, because especially if they have ties to these sort of companies.
Yeah,
Imagine that.
there is a tie because there's this guy, what's his name, Luis Elizondo, who was
That's his name,
supposedly
I know the guy.
ran the, what do they call it, A-tip or something, the...
I'm just kidding. I have no idea what
He was like the guy that ran the US government program for investigating UFOs.
Jesus
right?
Christ.
And he's related to this company. And he had some role in these videos coming out, right?
Yeah, sus. That is sus.
It is sus. And so I looked at, there was some documentary or whatever, you know, John Podesta is the guy that like ran the Clintons' campaign, Hillary Clinton's campaign.
Yeah.
And he's like obviously juiced in with them. He was like interviewed in it being like, you know, we should release the files. So like this guy who's like the right-hand man of the Clintons is like hyping it up.
Yeah.
The Clintons have kind of hyped it up a bit, right? All these like former intelligence people
Yeah.
are
It's
kind of
very
hyping
sus.
it up.
Yeah.
There's this weird economic relationship with this company and Tom DeLonge. God knows how he got involved in all this.
What the hell? How did he stumble into this $1 billion scheme?
And so that makes me, that whole thing is like a bit
That
weird,
is sus.
right?
That's a great little backstory to the whole alien
Yeah,
thing.
and anyone can look it up. Pull that up, Jamie.
Yeah.
To the Stars SEC crowdfunding. Find the filing, right?
I'll put. You know what we're gonna do? We'll put it in. We'll put a link in the description.
Fuck yeah.
Is that gonna be allowed?
If it hasn't been scrubbed by the CIA or something.
Yeah. We'll definitely put a link in the
You
description.
should be able to find a SEC filing for their crowdfunding campaign. Yeah, that'd be it. So just go to use of funds.
Make sure we don't stop recording, Pat. Are we good?
I don't know if the header will be exactly use of funds, but that's the gist. Like, what are we going to do with this money? And you read the
That is
things and you're
absurd.
just like, what
This
in
is
the
fake.
actual fuck?
I need to use the bathroom, dude. Do you want to jump in while I'm here, Patty?
Yeah.
We can do an edit as well, but yeah, jump in, Paddy. But I want you to find this thing.
Oh yeah, find the thing. Keep talking with
But you're mic'd up somehow, aren't you, Paddy?
Yeah, I think I've marked up from over there.
All right, Loom. Loom.
See, senor.
We're back. We're back.
Sort of.
I don't know when we took the break.
We're talking about.
We're talking about the SCC documents
Yes, indeed.
from the
To the Stars.
To the
Academy
Stars.
Of Arts and Science.
Yeah,
Or whatever the fuck it is.
yeah.
Yeah. I think we worked out basically that they look a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
Um,
And so, do aliens exist, and are they on Earth, or are they not?
Yeah, I think it's probably balance of probabilities leans in favor of yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we decided to wrap it up. How do you feel about that?
I feel like that was a productive discussion.
I'd love to have you on for a second round
Yeah.
and talk purely aliens if you want. Do you want to do that?
The alien pod, sure.
All right. We'll get Paddy maybe in front of the camera this time.
Yeah, we need some more mics.
Yeah.
Let's get the round table discussion going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, things to improve on in the future. Do you have any feedback? You're a fucking podcast, you know what I mean? Veteran.
No, look, it's a pretty solid setup you got here.
Yeah?
Yeah, camera and all.
Yeah.
But I think Paddy needs a mic.
Paddy needs a mic.
Yeah.
Get a mic for me next time.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Soul Paddy episode next.
Maybe.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right, heck yeah. All right. As usual,
What's your outro?
like the thing, subscribe to the Spotify, the YouTube. It's available on all platforms. That
Yeah.
you can get your what did you say at the beginning?
all good podcasting
Yeah.
platforms.
Yeah. But no, I'll post it on the Instagram. There'll be links to a lot of stuff that
Instagram,
you've
fuck
talked
me.
about.
That's
Yeah.
yeah.
What do you
this-
mean?
This is omni-channel.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
post links to some of the stuff that Louis was talking about in the description. Share the pod. Look forward to the next one. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Loam. I'll catch you soon anyway, everybody.
Yep. Sayonara.
Yeah.